Hello and welcome to my class. This is me Shupal Chatterjee and today I am going to discuss about cell. Now what is cell? Before going into the what is cell, how the cell works and what the whole chapter is all about, let us understand that this is a very integral part of biology. If we talk about the living being, if we talk about the biotic, abiotic, all these concepts, we cannot leave this whole chapter, the cell. Cell in itself is a very long chapter. Okay, it is in itself is a subject. It's part of biology, but we need to understand that cell in itself is a very complex concept. But let us understand in the class 8, class 9 or class 10 standard. So we need to understand that what is cell, how we can classify the cell in general, what is the broad classification, and let us understand this this a little bit. So before going into the cell, we need to understand that what is cell. Now cell is a structural and functional unit of a living body. A body, a person, an animal, a plant who is actually living, we can consider it a biotic part, the biotic part of biology, the living part, and this whole living part, this whole structure, we can consider that this whole structure is made up of small unit which are cell. So let us understand cell. So we can write it down that cell is a structural. Now please understand that write this whole thing, write as I am telling you, as I am demonstrating this whole chapter, please write it down whatever I am writing it in the board. So cell is a structural and functional unit of a living body. Okay, so we did get a thorough structure. We cannot say that this is a thorough structure, but we can get a limelight on the part cell. Now the cell, if we understand the history, that how the cell came, how we got to know that what is cell, how the cell is, where we did get the knowledge. Let us understand about some people, some person who have actually given this whole concept, who have originated, from whom the whole concept of cell has originated. So the number one person whom we can tribute to is the Robert Hooke. Who is this person? Around 200 to 250 years ago, Robert Hooke has told us that there is something in a living body which constructs the whole living plant or animal. So this person actually coined the name, the cell. How he coined it, how he proved it, he actually saw under the microscope a dead cork. He saw a dead cork under the microscope, and then he saw that these type of structures are in that particular matter. Now let us understand that cork is actually a living body. The cork itself comes from a living body, the plant, and then this cork has shown this type of structures. We cannot see this in the naked eye, but if we take it under a microscope, under a simple microscope or developed microscope or whatever it is, or a light microscope, we can see this type of structures. These type of structures are just looking like a place to live. Now I am right now in a room, and room can also be called as cell. So from this word, the room or the cell, this just looks like a particular room, an individual room is structured in the whole dead cork. So Robert Hooke has coined them as cell. Now let us understand that Robert Hooke did put a limelight on that one particular subject, but what he saw is actually a dead cell. We did not know that whether didn't have any idea that this cell will actually is actually existing in our body, in a living body or not. So how did we know that this is a part of a living body? This discovery was done by Anthony von Leeuwenhoek. Fascinating person. What he did, that he actually observed the living cells under the microscope. Please note it down that he actually observed the living cells under the microscope, and thus we get to know about that the cell is a structural and functional unit of the living body. Got it? So these two names are very, very important. There are so many names regarding the cell, so many different scientists' name are there, but these two names are more prominent than anything. Now let us talk about the cell theory. Now what is cell theory? Two scientists, their name, both of them are from Germany, and they give this particular theory. The name was Sladen, number one, and number two is Swan. These two people actually gave the concept of cell theory. In this theory, they actually talked about that what we can call as cell. What should we call as cell? So they gave that theory, and by deducing this theory, we can understand that how cell actually works and what is a cell. What can we describe? What can be described as cell? So it is a very lengthy part. It's a lengthy project. I'm not going to going into that. I'm just giving a brief understanding of the cell. So then, these are the four names: Anthony von Leeuwenhoek, Robert Hooke, Sladen, and Swan. These four names are very prominent if we want to get a thorough idea of cell. Now let us understand that how can we classify the concept, the cell. So there are lots of types of cell. If we get to understand that how our body works, in human body, there are several types of cells, and different cells have different type of structure. So we need to understand that these type of cells, all the whole concept, we cannot justify it in one single video. But a broad classification can be done whenever we talk about the living cell. Okay? So the broad classification of cell can be done in two ways. The cell can be classified into two ways broadly. The number one is prokaryotic, and the second one is eukaryotic. Now this word, this prokaryotic, this eukaryotic, these have actually noted down just because they have these type of structures in themselves. So let us understand that what is prokaryotic, and then we will talk about the eukaryotic. So prokaryotic, this word karyon, the karyon means nucleus. Let us understand that the karyon is the word that points as a nucleus. So what is prokaryotic? What is prokaryotic cell actually? Prokaryotic cells means in these types of cell there is no well developed nucleus. No well developed nucleus is there, and thus we can generally call it as the prokaryotic cell. And what is the eukaryotic cell? We can generally say that it contains a developed nucleus. Okay, let us understand that, and then we will come later about all these things. Okay, so no well developed nucleus and there is a developed nucleus. This is the major difference between prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. Okay, got the point? Now, there are some distinctions between prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. If we talk about the ribosome that prokaryotic cell contains is generally 70S, and the eukaryotic cell, the ribosome that contains the eukaryotic cell contains is 80S. Okay. So there are some distinctions, there are some parts which we need to talk about, and in this short video I can't explain more, but let us understand that cell is a very vast concept, and if we get to know about this whole concept, this whole scenario, we need to understand that what is actually cell, how the cell works. These are all these things. I'm just taking more of another 5 minutes to deduce all of that. No well developed nucleus is present in the prokaryotic cell, and well developed nucleus is present in the eukaryotic cell. There is a 70S ribosome and in there is a 80S ribosome. There are lots and other types of things like prokaryotic cell or eukaryotic cell. They also get something, they also have something which we can call as cell organelles. Organelles means that they are not organs. Let us understand that these are not organs, but these are part of cell. We cannot say that cell is a very this is just a structure, this is just like a brick. No, cell is not brick. We do understand, we can understand by the structural way, the build, how the whole building is made up by using one particular brick. But we need to understand that cell doesn't work like that. Cell is not a rigid portion, a rigid part of our body. Rather, cell contains different types of organelles which are actually beneficial for our body, for the whole function of the living body itself. So we need to understand that the prokaryotic cell, in the prokaryotic cell, what is the distinction of cell organelles? The prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. Prokaryotic cell does not contain the membrane bound organelles. Now what it is? What is the membrane bound organelles? Membrane bound organelles are those organelles which are actually covered by a membrane. If we get to know about the cell, we will get to know about the cell wall, cell membrane, and these are all actually give the structure, the specific structure of that particular cell. But let us understand that cell in the prokaryotic cell itself does not contain those organelles which are actually membrane bound. All those organelles are also membrane bound, but these membrane bound organelles are not going to be are not present in the prokaryotic cell. Rather, in eukaryotic cell we can get the membrane bound organelles. Those organelles which we found in eukaryotic cell, these are all membrane bound, and thus this distinction is very, very important. Let us give it an important mark, and we will understand that this is very important. These 2 points is very important. And what are the membrane bound organelles? What are the examples of membrane bound organelles? We can say that mitochondria, okay, which we can call it as the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, now there is plastid, Plastid can also be called as the membrane bound organelles. There are several types of like Golgi body. This is also a membrane bound organelles. So overall, there are many membrane bound organelles which are present in eukaryotic cell, but in prokaryotic cell there is no trace of membrane bound organelles. So that's all for this video. Let me summarize this whole video. We got to know about that what is cell, how the cell how can we classify the cell, what is some important names regarding cell, like number 1 is Robert Hooke, number 2 is Anthony von Leeuwenhoek, number 3 is Sladen, and number 4 is Swan. Sladen and Swan have given us the cell theory, whereas Anthony von Leeuwenhoek has did give a structure that how the living body is the cells is present in the living body and a living cell, and the whole concept of cell have come from Robert Hooke. And then we get to know about two important classification of cell, that is prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. Prokaryotic cell has no well developed nucleus. Eukaryotic cell do have the well developed nucleus. Prokaryotic cell does have the 70s ribosome. Eukaryotic has 80s, and prokaryotic does not contain the membrane bound organelles, and eukaryotic cell contains the membrane bound organelles like mitochondria, plastid, and Golgi body. That's all for this video. I hope you will like it. Thank you.